Over 25,000 people are currently missing across the United States of America, which represents approximately 50% of the number of resolved missing person cases, according to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. Nicholas Barclay was one of those missing people. Nicholas Barclay was missing. 3 years after his disappearance, Nicholas was found, but something about him was deeply wrong. His hair was a different color, he spoke with a foreign accent, and he now resembled a fully grown adult, despite vanishing at just 13 years old. Let's rewind the clock to a warm summer evening in 1994. 13-year-old Nicholas Barclay was playing basketball with his friends in his hometown of San Antonio, Texas. It was a completely normal way for him to spend a summer evening, just as his family would have expected. However, unusually, Nicholas didn't return home that evening. He was neither seen nor heard from by his family or friends, and seemingly vanished without a trace. For 3 agonizing years, the Barclay family was left without an explanation for their son's disappearance. Then, in 1997, Nicholas Barclay was found. Strangely, though not without reason, he was located over 5,000 miles away from his hometown of San Antonio in a small Spanish village. Nicholas was flown home to Texas to be reunited with his family. Upon his return to the United States, Nicholas explained that he had been kidnapped by a child ring and halfway across the world. He managed to escape the perpetrators, but not before, as Nicholas claimed, they had changed his eye color from blue to brown. Nicholas's new eye color was just one of many changes to his appearance. As mentioned earlier, his hair had changed color, his nose was noticeably wider, he had adopted a French accent, and he resembled a fully grown man despite being only 16 or 17 years old. This came as a shock to the Barclay family, but they attributed these changes to time, stress, and the actions of Nicholas's kidnappers. Ultimately, they were over the moon that their missing son had finally returned home. Nicholas's story was so intriguing that it drew the attention of a TV crew, which arrived to capture this emotional moment in their lives. By the end of the year, in late 1997, a local private investigator grew suspicious of the case while working alongside the film crew. Whereas the Barclay family was ready to dismiss the distinct changes in their son's appearance and character, Charlie Parker, the private investigator, saw them as red flags. He believed that something wasn't adding up. By comparing a photograph of Nicholas's ears before and after his disappearance, Parker was able to confirm his suspicions. Whoever this person was, he wasn't Nicholas Barclay. The imposter lived with the Barclay family for nearly 5 months, until March 6, 1998. Charlie Parker's investigation led to FBI involvement, which eventually obtained a court order to take the imposter's fingerprints and DNA. These were later identified as belonging to a French national, Frédéric Bourdon. Distressingly for the Barclay family, they had been deceived by a man nicknamed by the press as the Chameleon. He earned this moniker by assuming at least 500 false identities. In September 1998, Bourdon pled guilty to passport fraud and perjury in a San Antonio federal court. He was imprisoned for 6 years, which was twice as long as the sentencing guidelines, and deported back to France in 2003 after the conclusion of his sentence. Unfortunately for the Barclay family, Nicholas Barclay is still missing. Plenty of theories have surfaced in this case, most notably the idea that the Barclay family knew the truth all along and only accepted Bourdon into their home to cover up a darker secret. In fact, this claim was made by Bourdon himself, who stated, "I think something happened inside that house, but I can't prove it." Private investigator Charlie Parker was compelled by Bourdon's words. He noted that the Barclay family expressed frustration with Nicholas, who had a history of violent behavior. Additionally, Nicholas's uncle, Jason Barclay, unalived himself shortly after Frédéric Bourdon's true identity was revealed. Were these two events connected in some way? Parker has spent years trying to prove the Barclay family's involvement in Nicholas's disappearance. He remains convinced that there's much more to the story and that the family knows the truth. Despite Parker's efforts, it's been over 30 years since Nicholas went missing, and the chance of uncovering anything new is slim to none. It's likely that Nicholas's disappearance will forever remain a chilling mystery. Lars Mittank might be the most famous missing person on YouTube, perhaps even the internet as a whole, and yet he hasn't been found. Video of his last sighting, or possibly final moments, has been viewed millions of times. Security footage from Varna Airport in Varna, Bulgaria shows Lars running out of the airport and into a nearby forest. This happened on July 8, 2014, and he hasn't been seen or heard from since. Lars Mittank is missing. Born in Berlin, Germany, Lars was 28 years old at the time of his disappearance, which occurred over 10 years ago. He worked a stable job at a power plant, had friends, a girlfriend, and a good relationship with his family. After Lars' father suffered a stroke, he would often help at his parents' home after work. Lars was a completely normal person who had no obvious reason to abandon his life. His disappearance was preceded by a vacation, which is why Lars was in Bulgaria. He wasn't there alone and had travelled to the Golden Sands resort on the northern Bulgarian Black Sea coast as part of a group of friends. The group set off on their vacation on June 30th, 2014, and it was Lars' first time outside of his home country, Germany. One of his friends, Paul Roman, said in 2016 on German television, "We relaxed on the beach, swam in the pool, played football, went clubbing." And, referring to Lars, claimed, "He was relaxed, he was in a good mood." Another of Lars' friends, Tim Schult, reported that he didn't eat much. Schult stated that Lars would eat only a small bowl of soup or a small salad at a time. Aside from this minor detail, for the most part, it was a normal trip. That's until Saturday, July 5th, 2014, when Lars and his friends attended a bar in town. Mittank, a fan of the football club SV Werder Bremen, got into a disagreement with some other German nationals who were fans of FC Bayern Munich over the sport. Later that night, Lars parted ways with his group and was not seen by them until the following morning. He turned up bloodied and bruised, claiming that the German nationals from the night before had hired a group of 4 men to beat him up. He suffered from an injured jaw and a ruptured eardrum. These injuries were sustained 2 days before the group was due to fly back to Germany. Upon visiting the local doctor, Lars was advised not to travel and was prescribed an antibiotic. The prescription was given to him on a Sunday and therefore could not be fulfilled the same day. This led to Lars' decision to spend his final night clubbing with his friends, despite his injuries. Mittank's friends offered to stay with him until he was safe to fly, but he urged them to stick to their original travel plans, and they returned home on July 7th, 2014. Lars remained in Bulgaria alone and checked into the Hotel Kolarvarna, a cheaper hotel closer to the airport, for the night. This is where Lars' tale grows increasingly inexplicable. The day after his friends left, Mittank began to behave in a strangely paranoid manner. While at the hotel, he called his mother, Sandra Mittank, and whispered that she should cancel his credit cards because people were trying to or rob him. CCTV cameras inside the hotel captured footage of Lars pacing up and down the hallways, looking out of windows, and hiding in the elevator. At 1 AM that night, he left the hotel for an hour. What Lars did during this time remains unknown. The following morning, he called his mother again to inform her that the people pursuing him were getting closer. This brings us back to July 8th, 2014, the day Lars Mittank was last seen. On this day, he was due to fly home. He consulted with the airport doctor, Kosta Kostov, who gave him the green light to travel. Kostov later described Lars' behavior during this consultation as nervous and erratic. At the time, Varna Airport was undergoing renovations, and a construction worker entered the doctor's office. Lars was still there, reportedly reluctant to leave and expressing doubt about the medication he was taking. The presence of the construction worker caused Lars to tremble and yell, "I don't want to die here, I have to get out of here." He then got up and fled Kostov's office, leaving behind his luggage, which included his passport, mobile phone, and wallet. Lars was captured by airport security cameras leaving the terminal, jogging away from the airport, climbing a fence, and running into a meadow before sprinting off camera into an adjacent forest. He hasn't been seen or heard from since. After how long do we accept that we'll never understand the circumstances behind a disappearance? 5 years? 10? 20? 30 years? Trevaline Evans, from Llangollen, Wales, is missing. It's been over 34 years, and her mystery remains unsolved. On Saturday, June 16th, 1990, Trevaline followed her usual routine and opened her antique shop, Attic Antiques, on Church Street at 9:30 in the morning. The shop sat quietly on the quaint back road, with Trevaline's blue Ford Escort estate parked 200 yards away. It was a typical summer Saturday morning in northeast Wales. During the first few hours of business, approximately 25 friends and customers visited Attic Antiques. According to those who stopped by, Trevaline appeared happy and relaxed, and she had made plans to go out that evening. Local police mentioned that the town was busy that Saturday and the sun was shining. Around 12:40 PM, Trevaline left a note on the door of her antique store, notifying potential customers that she had stepped away and would be back in 2 minutes. Shortly before leaving the note, Trevaline had been seen conversing with a smartly dressed man inside the shop. It is unknown whether this man was involved in her disappearance, and his identity has never been traced. Between leaving the shop and vanishing, it is known that Trevaline bought an apple and a banana and was seen crossing nearby Castle Street. Although unconfirmed, some say that a banana skin was found in the dustbin at Attic Antiques, indicating that she returned to the shop before going missing. Inside the shop were Evans' handbag, car keys, and jacket. along with some fruit and flowers that she intended to take home that evening. Her blue Ford Escort estate remained parked 200 yards away. The last confirmed sighting of Trevaline was near her home on Market Street around 2:30 p.m. on the afternoon of June 16, 1990. Two more suspected sightings, both unconfirmed, occurred later that same day. A woman matching Trevaline's description was seen walking out of town along the A5 toward Corwin at 2:35 p.m. near the Riverside Park. Around an hour later, at 3:45 p.m, a similar woman was spotted walking into Park Avenue from the direction of the River Dee. Every single resident of Llangollen, along with some residents of surrounding areas, was interviewed in an attempt to locate Trevaline. Over 1,500 names were checked, and more than 700 cars were eliminated from the inquiry. The River Dee was searched extensively, as well as the canal, caves, and mineshafts in the region. No trace was found. An artist's impression of a man in a blazer, intended to help identify the smartly dressed man seen speaking to Trevaline in her shop, was circulated during the investigation. However, this impression was later ruled out due to its inaccuracy. 10 years after her disappearance, in 2001, police arrested Trevaline's husband, Richard Evans, but he was eventually released without charge. The case was reopened at this time because police believed that new forensic techniques could lead to Trevaline's discovery. Unfortunately, they were, for a second time, unsuccessful. A re-examination of the case in 2010, on the 20th anniversary of Trevaline Evans' disappearance, suggested a possible connection to a serial killer named Robin Ligas. Ligas murdered 3 men in 1994 and served a life sentence for his crimes. However, a year or so after the re-examination, the connection between Trevaline's disappearance and Robin Ligas was ruled out. Since her disappearance, apparent sightings of Evans have been reported all around the world, from London to France, and even in a remote town in Australia. In 1993, police sniffer dogs searched a canal bank near Llangollen after a woman wrote to the police claiming she had been overwhelmed by a feeling that Trevaline was nearby. Trevaline's whereabouts remain unknown. On December 7, 1971, the final bulb inside a mansion in Westfield, New Jersey burned out. Neighbors of the property noticed that the lights inside the home had been left on for about a month. The bulbs had been burning out, one by one. This raised suspicion, and the local police department was called to check out the property. What they found inside was disturbing. 4 bodies were laid on sleeping bags in the mansion's ballroom, and a religious radio station was playing from a device inside the home. The owner of the mansion, John List, was missing. Let's rewind to November 9th, 1971, roughly a month before the police were called to the property in Westfield. List, a devout Lutheran and Sunday school teacher, used a firearm to shoot his wife Helen and his mother Alma while his children were at school. Following the return of his daughter, Patricia, and his youngest son Frederick from school, List gave them the same fate. After this despicable act, he made lunch, drove to the bank to close his and his mother's bank accounts, and headed toward Westfield High School, where his eldest son, John Frederick, was about to play in a football match. After the game, List drove John Frederick home before shooting him repeatedly. Evidence of a misfire suggests that John Frederick attempted to defend himself against his father. This fateful day marked a tragic end for most of the List family, but not for John List himself. The bodies found in the ballroom were identified as Helen, Patricia, Frederick, and John Frederick. List had hidden his mother Alma's body in the attic of her apartment. A letter penned by List to his pastor was found in his study desk. In it, he claimed he had seen too much evil in the world and stated that his actions were intended to save his family's souls. Following his heinous actions, List cleaned the crime scene, arranged the bodies neatly, removed himself from all family photos, and tuned a radio to a religious station before vanishing. John List wasn't seen again for 17 years, 6 months, and 23 days. During this time, Robert, better known as Bob, Clark, came into existence. As later discovered by the FBI in 1971, John List, under the guise of his new identity, Bob Clark, traveled from New Jersey to Michigan by train and then to Colorado. He settled in Denver and was hired as an accountant under his new false name, which he had based on a former college classmate. From 1979 to 1986, Bob Clark worked as the comptroller at a paper box manufacturer near Denver. He joined a local Lutheran congregation and even organized a carpool for members without transportation. At one religious gathering, Bob met an Army PX clerk named Dolores Miller, whom he married in 1985. In February 1988, the couple moved to Midlothian, Virginia, where List, still using the name Bob Clark, resumed work as an accountant at a small accounting firm. Just over a year later, in May 1989, the Fox television program, America's Most Wanted, recounted List's crime during its first year on the air. The segment featured an age-processed clay bust sculpted by forensic artist Frank Bender. The bust bore such a resemblance to List that, on June 1st, 1989, less than 2 weeks after the program aired, he was arrested at a Richmond accounting firm after a former Denver neighbor recognized the description and alerted authorities. List attempted to maintain his innocence and uphold his false identity as Bob Clark for nearly a year after his arrest. However, the evidence against him was irrefutable, and he finally confessed his true identity on February 16, 1990. At trial, List testified that he experienced crisis-level financial difficulties in 1971, which led him to commit the crime against his family. He recounted believing that there were two options: accept welfare or his family and send their souls to heaven. In List's opinion, welfare was an unacceptable option because it would expose his family to ridicule and go against his father's teachings. After 17 years, 6 months and 23 days as a missing person, Bob Clark was no more, and John List was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms for his crimes. Terrance Williams and Felipe Santos are missing. Under eerily similar circumstances, these men were arrested before vanishing into thin air. Both Terrance and Felipe were last seen being arrested by Steve Calkins, who was a deputy in the Collier County Sheriff's Department at the time, for driving without a license. Felipe was last seen on October 14, 2003. On that day, around 6:30 a.m., he and his 2 brothers were driving to work when they were involved in a minor accident. Calkins cited Santos for reckless driving and driving without a license, then placed him in his patrol car. This was Felipe's last known whereabouts. Later that day, Felipe's boss contacted the county jail to post bail, only to discover that Santos had not been booked. When asked about the situation, Calkins claimed to have changed his mind and dropped Felipe off at a local Circle K. He cited Santos's polite and cooperative behavior as the reason for his change of heart. 2 facts remain following Felipe's arrest. There is no evidence he was dropped off at a local Circle K, and Calkins' location after leaving the scene of the accident was unaccounted for nearly 2 hours. 2 weeks after Felipe's arrest, on October 29, 2003, after Calkins filed his incident report, Santos's family filed a missing persons report, accompanied by a complaint against the deputy. An internal investigation cleared Calkins of any wrongdoing on November 27th, and Felipe's family has been left without an answer ever since. Around 3 months after the disappearance of Felipe Santos, on January 12, 2004, Terrance Williams vanished under similar circumstances after an arrest conducted by Steve Calkins. Terrance, a native of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and father of 4, had recently moved to Florida to be closer to his mother, Marcia. After Williams did not return from a co-worker's party, his roommate contacted Marcia with his concerns, and she eventually filed a missing persons report. Calkins claimed that Terrance had asked him for a ride to a local Circle K because he was late for work, although it was later confirmed that Terrance did not work there. Later that day, Calkins supposedly called Circle K to ask Terrance some questions about his vehicle. Phone and surveillance records did not support Calkins' story. There was no evidence of a call being made from his mobile phone to Circle K, and no sign of either Terrance or Calkins on Circle K's surveillance footage. Circle K employees were interviewed, but no witnesses could be found to place either Terrance or Calkins there. Based on the dubious outcome of the investigation, Marcia filed a complaint against the deputy. Despite the suspiciously similar circumstances surrounding the disappearances of Terrance Williams and Felipe Santos, both cases remain unsolved. Calkins underwent 3 subsequent polygraph tests. 1 was inconclusive, 1 indicated honesty, and 1 indicated deception. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the FBI were called in to investigate Steve Calkins. Various investigative methods were used, including the covert placement of GPS devices on Calkins' vehicle, the forensic examination of his patrol car, and the use of cadaver dogs. No evidence was found, and Calkins was eventually fired for providing conflicting information about both missing persons cases and for not cooperating with the investigation. After Calkins left Florida in 2016, his former home and the land it sits on were investigated. No human remains were found. That concludes our dive into the mystery of going missing. If you enjoyed this exploration of strange disappearances, be sure to click or tap the like button to show your support. Subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated on future content, and comment below if there are any oddities or mysteries you'd like me to cover next. Thank you very much for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.